Hello everyone, it's me, GameBanger21, and today we're going to be talking about this. So, obviously, the Valve Steam Deck OLED has been announced and has been on pre-order and is being shipping out fairly soon at the time of me recording this video. Now, of course, this being a Steam Deck thing, there's going to be certain people, mainly Harman Smith, in this context, who have some things to say on it. So, with that being said, I think it's about time that we talk about my just quick thoughts on this. My very quick thoughts is that I think it's a pretty okay update, at least to the current Steam Deck lineup. Now, again, they might be still selling the LCD model, they might still be selling this model or that model, unsure of as to this in the future, but the improvements that have been made are pretty significant because they address some of the major issues of the Steam Deck. But that's not how Harman Smith sees it, and, well, let's get started as to how he thinks that this is bad.
Valve has announced a Steam. Valve has announced a new Steam Deck. Because the old one was such a huge, roaring success, selling something like what is it, like less than 2 million copies. It's trailing behind the Wii U. It's one of the biggest gaming flops I've ever seen in my life. But oh no, this time it has an OLED screen. And of course, the usual suspects are coming out saying, oh, it's gonna be way better this time. All the problems with the battery life and the screen and the interface are all gonna just magically go away with this minor upgrade, the Steam Deck OLED. But, this isn't about the Steam Deck, okay?
And we're going to get into that. But yes, overall, this is a pretty okay update. It addresses some of the major issues the Steam Deck has and, improves upon them. That's what a minor update should be. It addresses some of the worst problems and makes them better. That's how a lot of updates should work. But we'll get into why this person is going. Why, of course, Mr. Harman Smith is going to 100% say that this is not a significant upgrade, even though it is pretty significant, given that it addresses a lot of the major issues. And again, the OLED screen is kind of a bonus, but it addresses more of the other issues. Again, we'll get into that later on in the video.
Steam Deck is irrelevant. It's not important. Nobody really cares. The thing that annoys me about this, though, the thing that really bothers me is when you compare what these people did to the Switch OLED versus how they're treating the Steam Deck OLED. Because when you look back at the Switch OLED announcement, all you could see from these people, like Review Tech USA, to cite one example, is how it's a major disappointment, how they were expecting a Switch Pro, how a minor screen upgrade isn't gonna like make the Switch competitively viable in the future, and how like Nintendo was on the way out, how Steam Deck was bigger than the iPhone, the most important product since the iPhone, right? And how it was going to demolish like everything and be the greatest selling thing ever, and how Nintendo was going to go out of business, and the Japanese were going to be taking Steam Decks on trains, and they'd be emulating all the Nintendo games like everywhere, and nobody would ever buy a Nintendo console ever again, and Shigeru Miyamoto would go out like into Japanese bathhouses to give blowjobs because he would just no longer have a purpose in life, right? That was
Oh boy. Well, to be clear on this, no. I don't think anyone's really said most of those things that you said. I think some people said some of those things, but I have not heard a single lick of any of those arguments being made that you are talking about. And I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about how a lot of console fanboys seem to have this mentality that if you're defending something or you're listing off the positives of one thing, that overall you're basically insulting the opposite side. And while in some contexts that is true, especially if I give you some sort of blatant joke or sarcastic quip or even just a little bit of sass, I am insulting the idea that you had. I am not, however, insulting you personally. I'm just saying that you have this dumb idea in your head that your console is better than my PC, but I think that that's ludicrous, and here's a lot of reasons why. Overall, people can have opinions and have shit opinions about specific things. One recent argument is that the recent Last of Us Part 2 remaster is absolutely fantastic and totally not a scam at all. Even though it kind of is, and you really, really shouldn't buy it, because it's only going to perpetuate the fact that, Sony's going to continue to make and remaster these types of games. What about Killzone Shadowfall? Where is that remaster? What about some of the other games that have been left to dry on Sony's front stoop? Yeah. Again, I shouldn't be talking about that too much, but behoovent to the point, I don't think everyone's been making those same arguments that you've been talking about. So, no.
The narrative for the longest time, but the reality was quite a bit different, right? The Switch OLED came out, it was successful. This last investment meeting, Nintendo confirmed that it's actually outselling the base Switch now. But all of these analysts, all these YouTubers, all of these frauds said it was going to be a flop because it wasn't a significant enough upgrade to the Switch. Completely ignoring the fact that the Switch itself was an insanely successful product, and the OLED was simply a minor incremental upgrade. With some minor quality of life improvements that does have a lot of appeal for a certain audience, people who are looking for to being first time Switch owners or people who are looking to upgrade, right? It's not wasn't meant to be a replacement for the Switch. And yet, with the Steam Deck announcement, seeing the Steam Deck OLED, which, let's be honest, much like the original Steam Deck was a copycat of the Switch, the Steam Deck OLED is a copycat of the Switch OLED in that it's doing the same thing. It has, it's slightly more expensive. They made some ergonomic improvements. The screen is an OLED. It even has a similar name, the OLED, right? Like, that is what they're actually calling it, the Steam Deck OLED, trying desperately to associate with Nintendo, trying desperately to compare.
Okay. So I'm just going to stop it right there and just say this. As someone who has done and researched a bit in the marketing space, two companies doing a similar marketing move is not a copycat make. While yes, both of these companies do have OLED in their last names, that's probably just so it can be easier, and to differentiate themselves from their own products. Again, one of, if not the biggest things here, is that these two companies are not operating on the same level. Again, you have to understand one big thing is the Steam Deck in and of itself is a PC. They never claimed to really be associated or, talk about the Switch, really. I mean, they had that one time where they had Yuzu, but they took that video down and then re-upped it without the Yuzu because they more or less wanted to avoid some sort of copyright infringement type dealio. So that's pretty much what that was. But overall, no, I really don't think that that's the biggest reason for it. I think the reason for it is to differentiate it from the previous model, and then once that happens, they're just going to drop the OLED type of display thing, maybe. But again, I think that at some point the Switch OLED is now the only thing that you can really buy. I don't even think you can buy the LCD version. So yes, the Switch OLED was meant to be the quote-unquote replacement for the LCD display of the original one. And again, I will say this, again, it wasn't just updating the actual OLED screen. It was actually making improvements to the criticisms that has been leveraged against the Steam Deck. The Switch OLED did none of that. It just replaced the screen, did not address the battery life, did not address a lot of the other stuff. And you might be thinking like, oh, well, it addressed the software issues. Like, yeah, but that could have been pushed out to the original one without having to, make an entirely new product for it.
Their product to a far more successful and popular one. Gabe is desperately trying to keep his brand alive, for as long as he possibly can. He is getting stomped by the Switch. All of the best indie games are selling better on Switch than they are in Steam Deck now, right? On Steam now. Like, Steam is a dying platform kept alive only by desperate YouTubers and indie developers who just wouldn't be able to compete on a platform with actual releases to compete with.
Considering the fact there is actually a big AAA market on Steam as well, and a lot of the publishers that actually left Steam are now coming back to Steam because they realized that making their, launchers was actually fucking difficult. And, they were making a bit more money, but not as much as if they would be making it on Steam. the fact that they're coming back to Steam kind of should tell you a lot as to how well Steam is doing just by basically doing nothing.
As actual releases for people to play, right? Steam has never been able to put out a successful piece of hardware. And when the Steam Deck came out, before it came out, I was explaining this to you. I was explaining how Valve was taking a massive loss with every Steam Deck sold. I explained to you that they were trying to take a huge chunk out of the Switch market and that it was never going to work. I explained to you that the Switch was still on top of its game and that like Valve has a long history of like faulty products and not being able to continually support hardware for any period of time longer than a couple of years. I explained to you all of the problems that the Steam Deck was going to have in the first couple of years, and every single one.
Every single one of them was true, sure. Their recent history of not supporting specific amounts of hardware doesn't really hold water if you kind of think about it. The successfulness of their hardware usually depends on what they were trying to achieve. I would say that they've actually achieved quite a lot, and Valve has never been one to shy away from trying to work into that context. And yeah, certainly, they have not had the most success when it comes to hardware. I would say that their most successful thing was probably the Steam controller / Steam Link. Both of those seemed to be very solid products for what they were worth. But the thing is that also they're still making the Valve Index, the VR headset that they make. They still have that up and running and still available on Steam. And they even have a really solid reporting system to be able to send it in and have it repaired and refurbished. Doesn't seem that hard. I mean, they still have some of the best, in my opinion, PC VR hand-tracked controllers on the market right now. They still have some of the best VR hardware, and they now have a really good, solid console-like experience. Something that they said, not me. And they're saying, like, oh, it's trying to take their stuff out of the Switch marketplace. By that same logic, by the way, most of the other quote-unquote, PC like Switch alternatives that are on the market right now are also trying to fill that same need. And that's kind of what Valve does, is that they actually, get into a market pretty early on and show, hey, here is enough people to do this. Go right ahead and have other companies come in and, try to make them fail, because they know in the end that that it only benefits themselves and it benefits the market as a whole to be able to do this sort of stuff.
One of them was true. Steam Deck failed to be successful. There is no reason to own a Steam Deck when you could simply just own a Switch.
Bless you. And there is reasons to own it.
The platform simply has no audience outside
God damn it.
a hardcore group of Nintendo haters, PC steampunks, right? These guys who desperately want to trick you into thinking Valve is able to like outperform Nintendo in the hardware space, but in reality, it simply isn't true.
No one said they were going to outperform Nintendo in the hardware space. If you're talking specifically about specs, yes, absolutely. On paper, the Steam Deck is much more powerful, has much more options, and is much better on paper, again, in terms of pure hardware statistics and pure hardware numbers. The Steam Deck beats out the Switch in every category.
Right? Nobody wants to admit it. But Nintendo has been running circles around Valve for decades now. PlayStation and Xbox, right? There's been like Valve has not really been able to stay competitive because of their poor business practices, like their terrible company structure, right? Their inability to kind of do anything outside of simply running in a store that they have a monopoly on because they were early to the game compared to anyone else. There's nothing that makes Valve a better service than good old games or the Epic Game Store or like the Xbox Game Pass, right? Valve is just a company that exists. You know,
Yes, and they exist and they make a lot of money. A lot of people always say that, oh, there is obviously a monopoly that Valve has. No. See, Valve is a storefront, and they do very clearly want to have competition. They openly encourage it. They don't stop developers like all those publishers that came crawling back to their platform. They're like, yeah, go ahead, go right ahead, make your own stuff. We don't care. There are plenty of people who would be willing to stay on our platform because they have the best everything. Really, they have a lot of features that, yeah, they aren't as robust as certain other features and apps that are dedicated onto that platform, but those features still exist. They still have some of the best return policies possibly in the business right now, with a 2-hour refund policy if you don't like the game. Under 2 hours, return it and get a refund on Steam. Wow. Not only that, again, most if not all of the other competitors are less so. Even the stuff that you just listed off. Most of what Game Pass is Game Pass is kind of a service where you stream the games. You don't play them natively. You can, of course, buy through Xbox as well. And again, that's not a bad thing. But again, being able to play the games, to play through all of them, why would you want to purchase them if you could just play them on a monthly subscription for $10 a month? And again, that's not a dig at that. I actually appreciate that you can get that sort of stuff as well. But there are other platforms out there that you just listed that are also on, computer. And that doesn't mean that Valve has an actual monopoly on the actual gaming market. Maybe they have the PC market cornered in that context, but it's not a monopoly because, again, it's just not how that works.
Like they are not going to be able to remain competitive in the long term. And I think the Steam Deck is a really good example as to why. They cannot make a product that's interesting, innovative, or practical, really. Like the Steam Deck is about $500, right? Like, for a basic now like a basic model. Like you would be well better off spending, saving some money getting a Switch or spending more money and getting a PC, right? Like what exactly is the benefit of getting a middle of the road product like that that's faulty, that has a ton of issues, that's failing near constantly, that has all these issues with like, I've heard things about like the fan overheating and stuff like that. Like the Steam Deck.
OLED, the Steam Deck OLED itself addresses a lot of those problems in the marketing material if you actually bothered to read it. Because not only do they actually improve the cooling system, which is, again, obviously one of the things that people complained about, they improved the battery life as well, but also one of, if not the biggest things here, is that it gets them onto the Steam platform. That's huge, because when you buy it, it comes preloaded with a console-like experience. You get to experience what it's like having a console handheld with the console power. That's what they say in the fucking marketing material itself. It's not itself a console because it also has a PC mode. It gets people in the door into Steam, and yeah, absolutely, it might not be the best, but I would recommend it over, say, a gaming laptop personally. Because when you use it, it's its own PC as well. And me having at least 5 to 6 PCs already, that says a lot that I still use my Steam Deck, despite the fact that I have a hugely competent gaming PC. I use it whenever I'm just bored or want to, just have a time on the poop shoot or something like that, or I'm traveling or something like that. I used it all throughout college because I couldn't bring my desktop to school. I couldn't bring my laptop because I didn't want to disconnect. Oh shit, I nearly dropped the thing. Look, the point being is that it's a niche product, and even the Switch is also a niche product. It's just been on the market so long because, well, it's Nintendo, and it was innovative at the time, but now it's become more of a novelty. And where novelty exists, there exists money. And where money exists, there exists people that are willing to innovate on that novelty for the people that want to have a better experience within that niche. It's just how the world works.
The long and short of it, could never have competed against Nintendo. Not even like a major phenomenon like the Switch, right? It would have flopped against the 3DS. It would have flopped against the Game Boy. It would have flopped against like anything that Nintendo put out against it. But Valve, Valve being Valve can do whatever they want, and not a single person will really address that what they do doesn't work, right? Like, how many people do you see admit that they don't play their Steam Decks that much, or that it's not viable to put it up against the Switch? That like no no Switch game is easily emulatable on the Steam Deck. I'd like to see you try emulating WarioWare Move It on the platform, all right, with the detachable Joy-Cons and stuff like that.
Look, other than some of the niche games that require you to detach the Joy-Cons or whatever, sure, all of those other stuff can be addressed. And I'll address them for you right here. As a Steam Deck owner myself, I will address them. Number one, do I use my Steam Deck often? Not really, because again, like I said, I have my gaming PC that I use more often than not than my Steam Deck. But I did use it more often when I was traveling, i.e., when I had no access to my PC. If I were going to another place, I would sometimes bring it with me, put it into my backpack, so that way I could get a quick game or two in offline for whatever reason on Steam. Number two, is it better than the Steam? Is it better than the Switch? Yes. Hardware-wise, absolutely. It is better hardware, period, overall in that context. And can you just, you can't, easily emulate it? Bro, we've been over this so many times. Just get EmuDeck, and you can literally emulate fucking everything on it. And even with Steam integration, because of the fact that they use Steam's OS system.
It just is never going to work. And
you know what? Actually, I think that I'm done. There's another minute to this video, but this video's already gotten way too long, and that just did it for me. Quite honestly, look, if you like the Steam Deck, if you like the Switch, there is nothing wrong with that. But you have to understand that the Steam Deck OLED not just addresses the screen problem that some people had, but also addresses a lot of the major faults with the game. Improved cooling, more storage, better battery life, more other things. You do take a hit because it does become a little bit bigger and maybe a little bit more heavier, but at the same time, those positives of every single negative aspect of the Switch being addressed in one update is incredibly good. And yeah, it's a bit more expensive. That's because the parts are a bit more expensive. And again, you're getting up to 1 terabyte TB of internal storage without the need to open it up and replace the system or hard drive in the actual system. And that's on top of the other functionalities of having a 1 terabyte SSD card, bringing you up to 2 terabytes of total storage, including external storage. You're telling me that out of all of that, that is not a significant improvement. The storage alone, in my mind, is worth the upgrade. Everything else is just the icing on top of the cake. But look, that's just my personal opinion, and maybe I am a little bit biased on this. But again, they addressed a lot of the major issues, and that's the difference between the Steam Deck OLED release versus the Switch OLED release. The Switch has had a number of issues that have been addressed to it, and a number of issues that have popped up over the years. Drift, the screen being bad, it being locked to its own platform, it overheating, it having this problem, it having that problem. It's had 13 years of problems that have not really been addressed. And when they announced that they were going to refurbish it, but they just made it so that way only, and I repeat, only the screen was replaced, nothing else. That was a major red flag for some people. And for me, that's not a significant upgrade. And for the majority of people, that's not a significant upgrade. Just replacing the screen is nothing, because there's still a lot of problems with it. Overall, look, if you want to get a Steam Deck OLED, or you want to get a Switch OLED, or you have the Steam Deck or the Switch already, I have nothing against you. But I hope that me pointing out that Harman Smith is this dumb makes you realize a couple things about at least him. Anyway, I think that'll about do it for this episode of I Rant Into a Microphone for way too long. If you like what it is that I do and want to support me in any way, shape, or form, links down to everything in the description below. Like, comment, favorite, and subscribe. As always, I love you all for supporting me through this endeavor. My name is GamePenguin21, and a peace off.
Hey man, can I get a favor? Yeah, sure, hot.